Hey, pull up a chair for a second because I need to tell you about the meeting that didn't blow up and why that might be the most dangerous outcome of all. Back in May, Donald Trump flew to Beijing to sit across from Xi Jinping, and everybody expected fireworks. Instead, they got a marching band playing YMCA, performed by the Chinese military, a crowd of kids waving flags, and a president walking away saying the relationship between the two countries is going to be better than ever. Sounds nice, right? Except buried inside that photo op was a sentence that should be keeping people in Tokyo, Manila, and Taipei awake at night. And honestly, it should be keeping people in Ohio and Arizona awake too, because what happens to Taiwan does not stay in Taiwan. Let's talk about why. Here's the thing nobody wants to say plainly. Xi didn't come to that summit to talk about soybeans. He opened by telling Trump, point blank, that Taiwan is the single most important issue in the entire US-China relationship, and that if it's mishandled, the two countries could end up in what he called clashes, even conflict. That's not diplomatic filler. That's a warning label. And how did Trump respond to a direct threat about the most consequential flashpoint in the Pacific? He said he wants both sides to cool it. He said he isn't looking to fight a war 9,500 miles from home. Fair sentiment, honestly. Most Americans probably agree with him on the gut level. But here's the problem. There's a $14 billion arms package for Taiwan that's been sitting on his desk, and instead of approving it, he told reporters he might do it, he might not. That's the kind of answer you give about a restaurant reservation, not about whether a democracy of 23 million people gets the weapons it needs to defend itself. Now, why does this matter for the United States specifically, and not just as some abstract foreign policy footnote? Because while Washington was busy being ambiguous, Beijing was busy being precise. In the exact same window, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel sailed directly into the restricted waters around Taiwan's Pratas Island, forcing Taiwan's own Coast Guard to respond. Around the same time, the Philippines was dealing with Chinese pressure at Scarborough Shoal, watching floating structures appear and disappear in disputed waters that fall under a mutual defense treaty with the US. None of these individually look like a five-alarm fire, but stack them together and you get a pattern. China is not testing whether it can win a war. China is testing whether America will actually show up when it counts, in small enough increments that no single incident forces Washington's hand. And this is where the real American story kicks in, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. At the exact same time all of this is unfolding in the Pacific, the United States has been running down its own defense industrial base, fighting a different war entirely, the conflict with Iran. Interceptors, munitions, logistics capacity, all of it has been consumed at a pace the production lines were never built to match. Analysts in Washington have said it directly. The lesson from Iran is that if the US doesn't fix its industrial base fast, it may end up learning the exact same lesson the hard way in the Indo-Pacific, except next time the opponent isn't a regional power, it's China. That's not a talking point from some fringe account, that's coming from the actual defense establishment. So you have an American military stretched by a Middle East commitment, an American president publicly uncertain about a major arms sale, and a Chinese leadership that is watching every single one of those data points in real time. Let's talk consequences, because this is where it stops being abstract and starts being personal, even if you've never thought about Taiwan in your life. Taiwan makes the overwhelming majority of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips, the ones inside your phone, your car, your hospital's MRI machine, and every piece of American military hardware built in the last decade. If Washington's credibility on Taiwan erodes to the point where allies stop trusting the American security umbrella, you don't just get a regional crisis, you get a supply chain shock that reaches directly into American factories and American wallets. That's consequence number one, and it's economic before it's ever military. Consequence number two is what happens to the alliance system itself. Japan, the Philippines, Australia, these aren't abstract partners. They're the architecture that's kept American power projection in the Pacific functional for 70 years. And right now, all three of them are watching the same footage you're watching, reading the same ambiguous quotes from the same summit, and quietly running their own numbers on whether Washington's word is still worth what it used to be. Once an ally starts hedging, once a government in Manila or Tokyo starts building its own redundancies because it's no longer sure the American guarantee is unconditional, that's not a headline you get to walk back with one good press conference. That's a structural shift, and structural shifts don't reverse just because the news cycle moves on. And consequence number 3, the one that hits closest to home, is the plain fact that ambiguity is not the same thing as peace. Trump wants to avoid a war 9,500 miles away. And look, that instinct isn't crazy. Most people watching this video probably feel the exact same way. But there's a difference between avoiding war through strength and clarity and avoiding war through a kind of strategic shrug that leaves everyone, allies and adversaries alike, guessing what America will actually do if the moment ever arrives. History has not been kind to great powers that let adversaries fill in the blanks on their own resolve. It tends to end with the adversary testing exactly how far that blank space extends. So, where does this actually go from here? Nobody knows for certain, and anyone who tells you they do is selling you something. What we do know is this: China is not waiting for a green light from Washington to keep pressuring Taiwan's outer islands and the waters around the Philippines. The American defense industrial base is not going to magically restock itself while a second theater in the Middle East keeps draining it, and the arms package sitting on a desk in the Oval Office is either going to get signed or it's going to keep sitting there as a very expensive symbol of exactly how uncertain American commitment currently looks from the outside. Every day it stays undecided is a day allies recalibrate a little further and adversaries take a little more confidence. Here's the uncomfortable bottom line. The United States built its entire Pacific strategy for 70 years on the assumption that American power would always be too overwhelming to seriously test. That assumption is not holding the way it used to, and the country that benefits most from the doubt isn't the one asking the questions in a press conference. It's the one quietly building Coast Guard patrols and support ships that don't need to fire a single shot to make a point. You don't need a war to lose a region. Sometimes all you need is a really good, really patient case of maybe. That's where things stand right now, and honestly, that's usually when the real decisions get made quietly, long before anyone puts out a statement about it. If you want to actually understand what's happening in the Pacific, instead of just reacting to the headlines when it's too late, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of story that gets loud right after everyone stopped paying attention to it.